So first we got a request and said, hey, Dawn, can you declare these islands in the Rio Grande, Texas? When they're not declared as either Texas or Mexico, then they're literally safe havens for the cartels, law enforcement, military.
And that's how they've been treated for decades.
Forever. And the ass could maybe been in for many years. It took me 48 hours. I'm like, where's the center of the river? What's our treaty with Mexico? Done.
Ready to roll?
Yep.
All right.
Real Texan.
Why should this matter to Real Texans? Welcome to this edition of Real Texans, talking with the men and women of the Lone Star State doing great things to make Texas better. And that sometimes includes getting to visit with some of our statewide elected officials, like my good friend, Dr. Dawn Buckingham. Thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to come and visit today.
It's great to be on with you today, and hello to everybody, all your watchers and listeners.
So I want to start off. We'll talk about the GLO in a minute. All fun stuff. But I want to talk about you for a second. You Central Texas girl. At what point did you know you wanted to be a doctor? When did that notion hit you?
Well, I was a third generation surgeon. Right. So from the time I was about 4 or 5, and this is all pre significant rules in hospitals. My dad was an orthopedic surgeon, and I would get up about 3 a.m. and round with him, and then go and be in surgery with him. And then his secretary would take me to kindergarten. So I kind of started early, thinking that was going to be my path. In fact, it was funny when I was 9 and I charted out my potential life courses. On one hand, I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon, but I was going to have my own island and build my own hospital, because I already didn't like all the regulations. I have a very anti-authority tilt, if you haven't noticed that yet. And then my other track was, well, maybe I'll be a politician. So I'm sitting at the dinner table. I'm 9. I've put a lot of thought into these different tracks. I'm pondering them. And I didn't even maybe I'll go for elected office. And I think my dad maybe spit out whatever he was taking a sip of, because he's like, you will never be a politician. You have too much of an anti-authority tilt. You're way too outspoken. You can't mask what you think. It'll never happen. Definitely the medical school route is where you should go. And then I end up doing both. So go figure.
There. Okay. So, but yet you chose a specialty that is a little different. Mm-hmm. Working with folks' eyes. Again, I'm a kind of, a whole lot of options, a whole lot of things that are less, a lot of things in medicine that have less direct impact on someone's daily life. A lot of things you do where, a little tiny millimeter change will change everything. What drew you to that kind of surgery?
Well, first you decide, do you want to be a surgeon or not? And I'm definitely a surgeon, see it, fix it, cut it, move on. That's kind of how I roll. And then I looked at, I need my patients to get better. That sounds a little silly, but I wouldn't do very well, say, in oncology or something like that, where so many of your patients pass away. So I need to be able to see people with a problem, fix it, get them up and running, and then they're all good to go. So that's, I loved oculoplastic. So it's tumors around the eye, tear drainage problems, eyelid malpositions. It's very much a positive impact on people's lives every day. And I loved practicing that. Practiced actually for almost 25 years before I gave it up when we won statewide. So I still put on my doctor hat every once in a while when we're in our 10 nursing homes for veterans that we run across the state. And I do miss practicing medicine, but I realized pretty quickly in my medical office that I could help one person at a time in my medical office, but I could help millions of Texans at a time in elected office.
So I want to talk, you mentioned now several times, shocking. I think this is maybe the fewest times you've used the word regulations when I've spoken to you. So that's, it's a whole thing there. You've scaled back your, the venom in which you use that word. I want to talk about being a doctor and dealing with the healthcare regulations. We at one point, most doctors, think, family practice physician and GP, they would be the doctor. They'd have a couple of nurses and maybe a receptionist / bookkeeper. Today, that kind of model almost doesn't exist in many ways because of the regulations, because of the push towards the crazy Obamacare and other things. How do you see the future of medicine if we continue on this path?
Well, my concern over the future of medicine is really what bridged me from being a physician to being an elected official. So I came out of the gate, again, thinking that insurance companies and the government pretty much completely wreck healthcare. You've probably been to the doctor when they said you need this medicine or you need this x-ray, and then the insurance company said, we don't think you do, or you have to try this other medicine that we already know doesn't work, things like that. So I became an advocate on patient-centered healthcare, which then led me to leadership positions in all the state, local, national medical organizations that then got me testifying a lot, which then got me to know everybody, which started to get me appointed. So I was actually one of the most outspoken critics against Obamacare. Right. It's still, I think it still Google's up today. Bloomberg sent a reporter down just to see who is this blonde chick and how is she kicking up so much dust against Obamacare. And after that article came out, I'm sure completely unrelated, I survived 4 audits. But by the 4th audit, I was pretty done. And I was like, I think you guys just put me into politics because now I'm running for office. I'm going to find my path. I'm very concerned about the future of healthcare. The fact that private equity companies are purchasing medical practices more and more and more and more. It becomes about the dollar and not about the patient. Physicians are frustrated, kind of like Border Patrol agents under Biden. They can't really do their job. They can't do what's right. Everything's interfering with that, and it's a big problem. So in some ways, I think with healthcare and our motto, we need to roll it back. We need to let the free market rule. You need to have direct pricing. I filed that bill every session in the Senate, but nobody ever wanted to hear it. So it's all right. We'll keep fighting.
And it does kind of indicate the power that we have allowed to amass to the insurance companies, where something as simple, seemingly simple, something that is so common in the rest of our life. If I can call 4 mechanics right now and say, how much would it cost to do this to my vehicle? And I'll get an answer. And I'll say, okay, is my truck worth that amount of money or not? But yet most doctors can't tell you what something will cost. Again, because of the structure.
Right. They can tell you their charge.
They can do the charge.
But they cannot tell you what it's going to cost you because the insurance companies do all their spin and everything else.
And there's just it just seems so unfortunate that we have we've essentially removed the patient out of healthcare, haven't we?
Right.
I mean, they're the object of the transfer of dollars. They're not a human being who, like you said, you want to see what's wrong, you want to fix them, let them move on to back to their life. And we don't allow that anymore, do we?
It is getting less and less.
Yeah. All right. So I do think it's funny you mentioned about those audits being part of your drive into us. There's a colleague of a Texas elected official, leave it with that. I'm not sure I've heard this person speak about it publicly, but who I know who had been just kind of a workaday individual, had run for office, got elected with kind of a let's do good things for the community kind of thing. And then their spouse suddenly ran afoul of the Obama administration and had a series of audits come through on various related businesses. And the only thing they could relate to was a couple donations to some conservative groups. And so it took this individual from, yay, do good things to we've got to change the world. And certainly there are a number of folks that we now find
the weaponization of government is real.
The
weaponization should not be tolerated.
Which it feels like the Obama administration kind of brought forth. If they thought they were shut Dawn Buckingham up, if they thought they're going to shut up their people, they had the opposite effect, didn't they? Weaponization.
It's a motivation. When you've been picked on like that, when you've been persecuted like that, and so now I have 2 administrations who've come after me. The Biden one did, and Obama did, and then a Biden one was, I was on their list for sure, between declaring islands in the Rio Grande, Texas, and taking away strongholds for the cartels, and doing some other things. They had a lot of fun subpoenaing me, so I wasn't sad to see them go.
Okay, so we've talked around this. So I wanted to give me a sense though of the of how your family reacted. Your dad kind of laughed when you were 9 years old about running for office, but how did your family react when you you kind of crossed that Rubicon and said, okay, now I'm going to get involved. Now I'm actually going to kind of put the doctoring a little bit to the side so I can do this. What was the reaction?
I mean, they're reluctantly supportive. I mean, they know it's my dream. They know it's my drive. They know if they told me no, I wouldn't have pursued it, but I probably wouldn't have been very happy. So they're supportive of me, but I'll be honest, they pay a price. My husband's a physician. He gets, quote, fake patients who've never been to his practice who write fake negative reviews. They have patients who book their clinic and then cancel their appointments and say nasty things about my politics. People come after my children repeatedly. And so it's a heavy price to pay. But I feel like it's important to have good people who are in the fight who aren't going to back down. So my general theory on life is I just put on the armor of God every day and I walk unapologetically and do what I think we ought to do that's right. And that definitely draws some ire on occasion, but we're doing the right thing, and I think God will protect me and I'll be fine.
So you currently, again, as noted, you serve as our land commissioner. You held previous office. Help folks understand the difference between there's a different set of muscles you have to use when you're running in a district where you can drive around the neighborhood, you can shake hands, you can kiss babies or take their candy, whatever you need to do that day. And running statewide, that's a whole different beast, isn't it?
It is a different beast. I was on the school board before I was in the Senate. And you're right. Those folks, you can talk to everyone that's going to vote in your election, pretty much, and you can identify who those people are. And it's just direct voter contact. Completely different on a statewide level, especially being from a rural district. My district was 17 counties, 20,000 square miles, bigger than 8 states in geographic area and 9 other states in population. So I kind of thought, I've run a statewide race equivalent and, several states. And no, it's totally different. And people tell you Texas is big, but Texas is really, really big. But that's great. I love crisscrossing every corner. I mean, literally, in a 3-week period, I will have been in the far northeast corner, the far south corner, and the far west corner. And so because we have, whether it's timberlands in East Texas or we do everything coast or the city of El Paso, I basically have them surrounded. They can't grow if we don't sell them some of our property. And so we have something to do in every corner of the state. So I love crisscrossing the state and meeting new people and seeing new things.
What in those travels and that new kind of that first foray running for statewide office, what surprised you when you were again going from raised in Central Texas, worked in Central Texas, schooling took you other places. What surprised you as you moved around the state in
Honestly,
that kind of context?
It's easier to run statewide in a lot of ways. It's less up close and personal. Mm-hmm. The hardest up close and personal was school board. When you have jurisdiction over people's children and their money, they're not afraid to stop and chat with you at the grocery store. I'll just put it that way. And so that's super up close and personal. And then you run for the Senate. And of course, a big district came through a tough race and then a runoff and all of that. That was just every day, all day on the phone or knocking doors. But in a statewide, you really are, it's just very different because it's not that direct voter contact. You're just looking for groups to get in front of. It's just a very different thing. But I do love the executive branch. It is definitely a different group of muscles. Mm-hmm. Being in the Senate, and I loved being in the Senate, but you had to get everyone or at least a majority in both chambers to agree with you and then have the governor sign it. That's very different than being the executive branch where you have lanes and you keep it in those lanes and you do what the legislature tells you. And I'll be honest, the agency might have suffered a little whiplash when I took office because I'm like, let's go. I think coming out of COVID, they were not quite ready for that pace, but we're really excited about everything we've been able to do. We had some really big fights. When I came into this office, the Alamo was a wreck. We had big fight with the bar owner. We had just a lot of controversy going on. The Harvey recovery in Houston and Harris County was a big mess as well. Turns out the general land office was actually right, and the Houston and Harris County authorities were actually spreading lies and a false narrative. And the only real issue was the fact that the general land office hadn't spoken their truth. So that was a big surprise when I took office because I had different thoughts, having heard the narrative for a couple years. But I love the executive branch. It's a good place to be.
I want to talk a little bit about school board, but first, I just want you said something that's funny that kind of giving whiplash. I think one of my favorite things I've seen you do in the past couple of years was your announcements around land at the southern border. I think a lot of folks don't quite realize exactly how much the land office, how much land it oversees, but also how many things it does. And you mentioned, veterans hospitals and land and timberland and all these things that you're involved in, state records and the Alamo and all these things. But that you made the decision that the land office needed to help with the border invasion. You announced one day that you were buying the land, and the next day there were cranes and there were people pouring concrete. Absolutely insane how quickly, when somebody's motivated, can get things done in that office, isn't it?
That was a lot of fun. We had
there wasn't a lot of dilly-dallying there. There wasn't a lot of gathering around staff committees and things like that.
Right. So the border stuff has been really fun. So first we got a request and said, "Hey Dawn, can you declare these islands in the Rio Grande, Texas?" Mm-hmm. When they're not declared as either Texas or Mexico, then they're literally safe havens for the cartels, law enforcement, military.
And that's how they've been treated for decades.
Forever. And the ask had maybe been in for many years. It took me 48 hours. I'm like, where's the center of the river? What's our treaty with Mexico? Done. So that was the first three. The third one of those was 170 acres, big islands, caches of weapons, structures been built, of course, the drugs and the abused women and children and all that. The piece of property on the border, the Facilities Commission kind of approached me and said, "Hey, we've got this landowner. She not only will not allow law enforcement on her property, but she won't allow the right-of-way for the wall on her property. It's peaking in all of the crime statistics all along the border. Tons of bad things happening here. Pretty sure that's the first place that the rape trees were discovered." And they said, "Can you purchase it?" She mentioned that she would sell it, fair market value, of course. That's how, we can't buy anything overpriced. So we made her a fair market value offer, and she took us up on it. So literally within 24 hours of closing on that property, I'm in a bulldozer, bulldozing rape trees, just in honor of the fact and symbolic that we're not letting this happen anymore. We had the right away for the wall negotiated, and then we had the wall basically finished in a very short period of time. So hats off to the contractor, but that's how government is supposed to work. You're supposed to have multiple entities that come together and make it happen. And so we just like to make it happen.
There is so much, certainly you at the land office being engaged are practical things, but for the most part, all the practical power of government, that by design, is in those local offices, school boards, city councils, county commissioners. And yet those are often offices and positions that many of us as Republicans, many of us as conservatives, that we ignore. And you see the voter turnout where if you get, 5-6% turnout, as someone who did sit on a school board, who did, get accosted in grocery stores by parents and things. How do you encourage folks to look at those offices? How do we get more folks running for those offices? How do we get more folks voting in those elections?
I think that's a very good point. I joke that I ran for school board before it was cool. And I got in there and my eyes became wide open very quickly. That's honestly, your school board and your city councils are probably the most important elections that you have, and they often get the least amount of attention. And so our whole system was based on an engaged and educated electorate. It's just hard to wake that electorate up and let them know it's important to engage in every level of their race.
What do you think it is that blocks so many of our friends, of our voters, the folks who will, they turn out whenever there's a Republican primary, they turn out general elections, they'll turn out for constitutional elections, but yet there's something that's blocking them. I mean, schools levy half or more of our property tax burden, and yet there's some disconnect there. What is that?
I think if we could figure out, we would solve a whole lot of problems. But I do, whenever I speak, I'm like, it is really important to engage at all levels and know who your candidates are. I'm amazed at, we just had, our Lake Travis School Board election, and we had the DNC actively putting resources behind candidates. So now we have a school board member who's transitioning her small child. And of course, we all banded together and did our best to get our conservative candidates across the line, and it didn't even work with that. So, and it's a conservative area. So we have a lot of work to do. So we just keep banging the drum, trying to wake people up.
Okay, let's talk about the land office for a second. Again, it's one of our oldest state agencies. It does a lot. I'm curious, and this might sound insulting. I hope it doesn't. Did you know what you were getting into when you ran?
I did research it.
It is I'm always amazed when I'll visit the website or see some announcement come out. All of the things that the Land Commission's involved in.
I think it's the funnest job in Texas, honestly. So we are the last remaining entity from the Republic of Texas, which I take great pride in because we were some of the original land grants and British consulate to the Republic of Texas. My family takes this republic thing pretty seriously. But when we did that, our forefathers had such brilliance and such forethought. So we retained our unowned land as opposed to every other state who basically sold that for what they thought at the time was a really good deal, $1 an acre to the federal government. So that's why you get all these western states that are majority federal land, and Texas has very little. So today that's 13 million acres. It generated over $5 billion for public education in the last 2.5 years. We're the largest mineral owner. So we get to not only responsible for the majority of production through our minerals, but we get to step in and fight, one, for property owners, because I can swing a bigger bat than your average property owner can, but two, for oil and gas. We're the lead plaintiff in all the Endangered Species Acts. And Ken, we work really closely with the Attorney General, but he needs a plaintiff with standing. So sometimes we even purchase property to have standing. So for example, the Golden Cheek Warbler, we purchased a piece of property just to have standing to get in that fight. And looks like we're going to get that delisted because, of course, the listing was not based on scientific evidence. So why follow the science? Because that's not what the liberals seem to do, even though that's what they profess. So the 13 million acres does a lot. Timberlands in East Texas, obviously a ton of oil and gas, a lot of agricultural leases. We're a pathway for our young kids who want to go into agriculture to be able to go into those fields. I mean, think about it. If you're a young child and you want to go into agriculture, if your family owns the property, you probably have a full-time job in town that supports your farming or ranching habit. If your family doesn't own that property, you're never going to be able to purchase property and run a ranch or a farm. And so we do a ton of agricultural leasing. We're looking for ways to partner up with, whether it's Farm Bureau or cattle raisers, how do we help these young kids who are trying to break into this industry do that? And then we do our veterans benefits. We have 10 veterans nursing homes, 5 veterans cemeteries, and Texas is the only state that has a mortgage lending program for our veterans that want to buy a house, renovate a house, or buy some property. So serving our veterans who have served us first is just one of my greatest honors. And then we get to do super fun things. Like I had my first resident of our nursing home turn 100, and she wrote me a note and said, "Hey, Dawn, I won 100 cards for my birthday." Well, she got several hundreds. So now every time we have someone turn 100, we do a little card drive. The last one got 7,000 cards from all over the world. It's just so fun to be able to bring that much joy and happiness to our veterans. And then, of course, the Alamo, probably the most important thing we're doing, $550 million project. And I imagine we'll run through that in a bit. But and then we do everything coast. We do habitat restoration. We're working on the largest Army Corps of Engineers project that they've ever done in a resiliency barrier for hurricanes, starting in Louisiana all the way to Mexico. We're wrapping up the largest disaster recovery, which was Hurricane Harvey. And so we literally, I tell everybody, we are literally the agency that touches your lives every day in a positive way, and you had no idea that we existed.
I think it's one of the fun trivia points came across at some point was that the GLO, the state of Texas, owns our beaches, and that no one individual has you don't have a house on the beach. You have a house that's next to the state property, which is the beach,
right?
And there are all these little things when we think of the state land. I think, well, it's a park. No. you're talking about land, as you mentioned, that people farm, they ranch on, where they're leasing from the state. It's much more than the vanity projects when we think of, again, a state park or a monument or things like that. These are productive places.
13 million
productive
acres.
things. Yeah.
We run 13 million acres.
Let's talk about the Alamo for a second, because, outside of all the other big issues, nothing it feels like has struck the heart of so many Texans as the situation at the Alamo has. And certainly a lot of that has calmed down in large part because of you and the Lieutenant Governor and the legislature coming in. But it does go to the importance of having folks with eyes who are willing to have eyes on these big, important places. Tell me about kind of where you see the Alamo going next. We all know the horror stories that existed. We understand the negligence that took place for a period of time. Do you think the Alamo has turned the corner? Do you think we're in a better place? And where do you think we're going next?
We're in such a great place. I do love all the passion about the Alamo. All of that passion means probably none of us will agree on exactly what's perfect place, but I do think we're in a great place. And it's funny whenever Texans travel, they say they're Texans. They don't say they're Americans. They say they're Texans. And it doesn't matter where in the world we've been. I always joke we don't do vacations that have roofs and air conditioning. We're rafting or we're hiking or we're hunting or fishing or something. And it doesn't matter where I've been in the most remotest of places. You say, I'm from Texas, and they answer back immediately, remember the Alamo, because it is literally that shining star of giving the ultimate sacrifice for your belief in your family and your friends and your fledgling nation. And just everybody knows about it and everybody reveres it. And then when we showed up to visit the Alamo, bringing our friends, and you stood on that corner and you saw the lovely wax museum to the right and the busy streets going, and your friends kind of looked at it and they're like, everything's big in Texas except that. Like, what is that? It? I mean, literally that. I mean, generally right. Wow, that's it.
You have to go back to the old John Wayne movie set to maybe see the Alamo a little differently if you really want to.
Right. And so you cross that busy street and the average visit was 7 minutes. So that's not how, so really what we're doing, it's an opportunity to make a visit worthy of the significance of the events that happened there. So of course, the first thing that opened after I took office, and of course it's a continuum, right? Lots of people, I'm not saying one person did any main thing, but so the collection center opened because Phil Collins, the singer, had bequeathed us with his collection. It's amazing. So that's been open. Currently under construction, we have a children's education center. So we're going to have dedicated curriculum, early childhood, all the way through high school to teach our kids our loud and proud history. And I mean, I'm line in the sand, liberty or death, like that's what we're teaching our children. As a side note, the first map that the General Land Office has produced that has Gulf of America on it happens to be my map about the Alamo. And I'll just side note story and I'll get back to the project. But one of my first remembrances of the battle ceremonies, this local superintendent gets up and he says, well, my people won at the Alamo but lost at San Jacinto, kind of giving the perspective that if the story for the Alamo is for Northern Europeans, nobody of Latin descent belongs in this story. And so my map is actually the ethnic origin of the defenders because we had African-American defenders. We had a ton of Latino defenders. We, of course, had your Northern Europeans because I want every child to look at the Alamo and hear that story and know that there was someone who looked like them, someone of that same heritage. So I want every child to know that is their heritage. So excited about my map. But so get forward, educating our children is the most important thing we do. And having a dedicated place they have a place to eat their lunch. We have a place for the buses to go when they drop them off, like such a better experience so that more of our children can learn our history. And then we've got what used to be the Wax Museum is a 160,000 square foot museum. It, of course, sets the Alamo in the context of time. We talk about Native American Texans. We talk all the way through how the Alamo continues to affect pop culture even today. It's battle-centric, of course. And then in the middle of that museum is a 4D theater. So you're literally going to sit in a chair behind a defender, and you're going to feel chair's going to shake when those cannonballs hit, and you're going to smell that gunpowder and smoke, and you're going to be able to immerse in that story of the battle and the bravery of our Alamo defenders unlike any other time. So all that's going to be great. Now let's get to the controversial part. So the cenotaph restoration is kind of getting on the tail end. So that's wonderful. I was the one who threw down the legal challenge that actually kept him from moving it at the beginning. So we feel very strongly about the cenotaph. So of course it's staying right where it is. So, but it had a lot of structural integrity issues, and we want it to stand for a long time. So we had to fix those. So we're really excited about that. That's kind of coming, wrapping up. So that's going to be new and beautiful, and it really looks good and allow it to stand for a very long time. Now what we call the Alamo is the church and the fort. So I use those interchangeably. Sometimes that confuses people. The church has real structural issues. The roof is over 100 years old. It has exceeded its useful lifespan. It's actually causing active damage to the building. The active damage to the building is that the limestone walls have been wicking salt water up out of the ground. So if you've seen limestone around a saltwater pool, it doesn't end very well. And so we've got some walls that need to be selectively deconstructed and reconstructed, to put it nicely. Additionally, the sacristy, which is one of the side rooms, was actually cut down by about a third when the Army came in and took over the Alamo, the U.S. Army. And then they stored, things like gunpowder in it. So we want it to be back to its original footprint. So to get that roof off and a new roof on, you can imagine, what if we got one of our big softball-sized hailstorms? What if we had one of our big rain dumps? It could decimate the building. So we're going to have to put a protective structure over it. So sort of like a big barn. But the size, generally we're going to leave as much as the Alamo visible as possible and allow visits as much as possible through this process. It's obviously going to be a bit limited, but we have to protect it when that roof is off. We think it'll be about a 16 to an 18-month period, from beginning of roof off to full roof on and all the windows redone. So it's going to be a while. So it's an opportunity for a once-in-a-lifetime picture. So come take your picture with the protective structure of the Alamo. We're going to leave the western facade that is, of course, the famous part of it visible, so you'll be able to get those pictures. And then when it's all said and done, I think it's going to be really an amazing experience. Our plan for the visit to the church itself is it should be 100% battle-focused. If all anybody does, and honestly, with everything that we have going, you will be able to come and spend a week. You could spend 5 8-hour days at the Alamo because we're going to have different tracks. You can learn more about the weapons used, for example, and run through the whole museum and have a virtual experience that emphasizes that, or emphasizes women at the Alamo, or whatever it is. So we have lots of different tracks. So lots of different ways to see the same material. But, we feel like a visit to the church should be somber, and it should be 100% battle-focused. And interestingly, and we're still working through it, and everybody loves it when I kind of tell them what I'm thinking, of we do that or we don't, whatever it shakes out with all the different opinions we have. But in my mind, I find it really fascinating. There are 13 stages of the cross and 13 days of the battle. So in my mind, and we're kind of working through this right now, we just take each day sort of like a station of the cross. You learn about, this is what happened this day, this is what happened this day, because every day actually had pretty significant things happening. And but I'm excited about it. It is a battle every day, but we really are trying to get the footprint of the fort back as much as we can. I actually had someone ask me why did they move the Alamo downtown? You can't imagine that the city allowed that encroachment on the fort's walls, because those walls run through those adjacent buildings. And so in the museum, we're going to delineate that by different colored flooring, so this is where the wall of the fort was. But it's going to be it's going to be amazing when we're done.
So someone out there that's thinking about running for school board, they're thinking about running for land office at some point. What kind of advice do you give people who are thinking of stepping up and stepping out in this kind of way? What are the things you advise them to do?
Yeah, I mentor a lot of people who want to run for office. And so I feel kind of like Uncle Sam in that poster, we want you, right? So, but no, we've got to recruit conservatives to run for these positions. And so there's lots of, I offer them any help I can. I've run 3 very different races. So I carry that perspective, but we definitely need people to engage. Most people I feel have kind of that calling stirring in them. But they're a little worried because honestly, the lies are awful. right? I mean, your business suffers, you suffer, your kids suffer, but it's important to get in there and fight the fight. We can't just cede that territory. So we do a lot of recruiting, but I just think if you have a little bit of that calling in your heart, you need to jump up and run, and there are a bunch of us who are ready to help.
Outstanding. Well, Dawn Buckingham, thank you for serving our state, and thank you for spending some time training today.
It's always fun to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining this edition of Real Texans.